So, one of the guys that was the biggest question marks last year, Ethan, for us, as much as we did kind of believe in his potential, was Nikola Topic. Okay.
Yeah.
Kasparas, dude, he's literally Nikola Topic if you put him in the Big Ten for instead of playing in the Adriatic League. And then you also brought him to the Nike Hoop Summit in 2024 to play against all the best high school talent. And he played in Barcelona, as much as he didn't play that much, and he mainly played on the B team. In his last season before this one, he did play 3 games in the EuroLeague and averaged 7 points. But obviously, again, with all of those question marks sometimes that we have, we're not trying to completely dismiss foreign leagues. They're playing against adults for sure, but kind of like last episode, we talked about Carter Bryant versus Noah Esengi or Nolan Traore versus Jace Richardson. Maybe these guys will be proven long term. And also, the other thing I'll say about Nolan Traore and Esengi, I'm definitely still open to those guys, obviously because of the French connection, as well as, all of the other European talent that has been showing out. But still, if we're looking over history, guys who've played, in Power 5 basketball have consistently kind of shown a little bit more just when it comes to numbers. Again, I know there's Giannis, I know there's Jokic, I know there's Wemby. Like, I'm not completely dismissing all of the foreign players. But again, historically, let's go back to Hakeem Olajuwon. He played at Houston,
Right.
But anyways, that's my rant there. The point is, Kasaparas Jakucionis has no questions about his level of competition, and he's played diverse levels of skill sets against European basketball and American basketball. What were your thoughts on Kasparas?
In terms of the Swiss Army knife versatile players that we've looked at, Jude, he's my favorite in this draft. He's a guy that does a little bit of everything. He's not extremely athletic, but he's still, quick enough, has a nice first step, plays really well in the pick and roll. I think they list him at like the 2 guard, but he's really a point guard. Now, he averages 15, 6, and 5, like you see on your screen, but he's a really, really talented playmaker, fantastic patience. I know he averages close to 4 turnovers a game, but he has the vision there, and he kind of gives me a little bit of Stefan Castle playmaking, where it's like when he hits the right pass, it is mesmerizing, like the angles that he's able to see and deliver dimes through. But he also, he gets a little carried away sometimes, and that's can get him into trouble. He only shoots 32% from 3, Jude, but I love his jump shot. He's
Me
got one of the
too.
prettiest jump shots I've seen in this draft, and he's a set shooter. He's not like it's always a consistent form, and he can shoot off the dribble. He can also shoot just standing still. So he gives me glimpses of Topic too, like you said, but I think he has a real shot at first being an off guard for the Spurs and just a really good playmaker as an off guard as well, but eventually could be kind of a backup point guard for us. And you know what? That could be where we slot him next year if Blake Wesley doesn't pan out
Right.
as the primary playmaker for us in that second unit.
Kasparas has that versatility, man. Like you
Mhm.
said, if Blake does work out, then we can play him at the backup 2, move Devin to the starting lineup. Same formula where we move Harrison to the backup 4, or start Harrison and move Jeremy to the backup 4. But dude, he definitely would address that whether it's the backup 2 or the backup 1.
Mhm.
I really think he would, man. Honestly, the first thing I have written down, Ethan, he's my favorite player I've watched this year.
Really? Yeah,
Out
yeah.
of
I
all of our
get it
prospects, he's my favorite. Trey Johnson is more athletic than him. I'll say that right now.
for sure.
But Kasparas is my favorite player out of all the guys we've watched. I know Mal Watch is probably like who I would say is number 1 on my Spurs big board just because of need, but he's my number 2 as of right now. He can create off the dribble, whether that's a blow by or a step back. He can score at all 3 levels. You saw him hitting fadeaway jumpers, in long 2s. You saw a little shorter 2s. Then you also see the 3s, whether it's catch and shoot or off the dribble. What I will say from what I was looking at today, it seems like his off the dribble shooting percentages are a little bit higher than the catch and shoot. And I was listening to another podcast today, and I thought they made a good point on this. They said, and I believe this was Corey Tulaba, also from No Ceilings, and he said that Kasparas is more of a shot creator than like a pure shooter. And I definitely got that. But also, I see what you're saying too. Like, yeah, the percentage isn't that great, but dude, you go watch his jumper.
It's
Like,
beautiful.
go watch the Kentucky game in March Madness, and he's got range too. It's not like
Mhm.
he's just, these are little corner threes. Like, he's pulling up, with confidence from deep. Um, Again, another appeal, dude. Only one dunk this season, so that ties into the athleticism, but I don't really think that's his game. And that's another reason kind of why I made the Topic comparison. But again, really good vision. He has a ton of court awareness. Like if he's coming off the right wing, let's just say in a pick and roll, or excuse me, the left wing in a pick and roll, and he's like coming up, near the free throw line, or like the top of the key is probably the better way to put it. If he's, dribbling off that pick and roll, if he sees he's got the wide open space, he'll stop, set his feet, pull up from three, splash. If he sees there's a lane driving inside, he'll just go and blow by guys, and maybe he'll have to do a little up and under, but he'll finish at the rim with smoothness, even if it's through traffic or if there's a wide open lane and guys catch up late. Or maybe he'll, dribble out to the elbow, make a stop, throw a pass to the corner in the left wing. That's just one scenario, that I kind of saw today. But the reason I bring all that up, again, high IQ, court awareness, he always has multiple different options when he has the ball in his hands. He's never zeroed in on one thing.
Yeah, not to compare every really good playmaking white guy to Luka.
No, but I see it.
There are some aspects to his game that are Luka-ish. I think of like he has really, really solid control at the rim, like you were talking about. Fantastic footwork in the post. I don't think that's been a go-to for him in college, based on what I saw, but I think that's an area of his game that will likely grow, where we can take advantage of his 6'6" size on smaller mismatches. And he also has that stop and go Stephon Castle hesitancy
Yes.
at the rim. Like that's already a part of his game too. So I understand the folks that aren't high on this guy because of athleticism, defense. He doesn't exactly explode off the screen. But if you watch the footage, like he's taken advantage of a lot of opportunities. And he has a really, really wide skill set, Jude, for sure.
Yeah. And I know we've harped on how the SEC was the best conference this year, but the Big Ten is no joke. I mean, think of all the basketball powerhouses that come through the Big Ten, whether that be Michigan State, Purdue. Obviously, Illinois had a really good year last year as well, so played for a good program with them. I'm probably forgetting some other names in there in the Big Ten. Our guy Malachi Branham, Ohio State's in there. They're not necessarily as much of a basketball powerhouse. Michigan was who I was forgetting. I knew I was forgetting a big one there. But man, I'm getting a little bit off track here with where exactly we were at. But just to get back to Kasparas, the fundamentals jump off the screen. And as much as you were kind of saying, like, while the athleticism may not be the craziest thing, when it comes to his play style, it's not necessarily something that he needs to impose himself on. And because he's so crafty, that allows him to mitigate whatever. He's so crafty and skilled, it mitigates any athletic lapses. But I would still say he's speedy. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
But again, not the only one dunk this season. Not going to be a big vertical guy, or somebody who's necessarily gonna, like if we compare him to Stephon, as much as like there are some play style and positional similarities, they're also very different physical specimens. But I did see what you were getting at there for sure. I was making that point more to just say like they're similar, but like Kasparas is like, a less athletic version of that. But the last thing I'll say about him, like I said, FC Barcelona, Nike Hoop Summit. The other thing I forgot to mention in 2022 in the FIBA U16 Euro Cup, so it's all of Europe. It wasn't the United States, but still all of Europe. Lithuania did win gold, and he was on that team. So I think he was a big part of that. Got to give him credit there. Beat other teams like France and stuff like that. I don't think he was in Wemby's age group, but still, there's a lot of European talent. As much as I was saying that, I do feel like a lot of the U.S. college guys, are a little bit more of a sure thing. But that's, I think, why you're seeing a lot more of these European guys come over and play college ball, like Maxime Radford, I believe is his name, the center from Stanford, among others. But last thing on Kasparas, Ethan, here's some player comps I got for you. So it's I mentioned Nikola Topic. The other two names I'm going to bring up don't necessarily, well, one plays his position, but isn't really a point guard, and the other is more of a wing, but it's more in play style than like size, if that makes sense.
Okay.
But I came up with Franz Wagner and Bogdan Bogdanovic. And if you've been watching that Celtics Boston series, you could kind of say that Franz's step back is a little bit slow. Do you know what I'm saying?
It is, yeah, for sure.
Yeah. And I think but again, it's very fundamental. It goes in, he swishes a lot of them, but I think that ties into kind of just that European, style of dribbling. Like that's why I noticed the Topic comparison, because they're just more tight. Like I said in fundamental, where you look at Trey, you got the Jamal Crawford, Allen Iverson type stuff.
Yeah, I like those. I'm going to add one more that I just thought of. Josh Giddey coming out of
Yeah,
Australia when he was in the draft.
I can see that too. Obviously, he's a little bit smaller than him, but still, like in
Mhm.
play style, 100%. And yeah, do want to harp on some negatives though. Like you said, Ethan, you mentioned sometimes he can get a little bit carried away. Did average 3.7 turnovers per game, had multiple 5 turnover games this season.
Mhm.
Um, but again, in all of those games, he also did a lot of good things. And I really think, Ethan, I'm not saying that there's not going to still be that issue when he gets to the league, but I really think that was an adjustment to American basketball, because a lot of those, it was like he thought a guy was going to be in one place, you know what I mean? And probably if he was playing in Europe, they would have moved there. And then, the ball goes straight into the stands because they didn't rotate the way that he thought they would. So yeah, that is one thing if I had to harp on some negatives. Another thing I'll say, I really like his on-ball defense in comparison to Trey. Like I would say from what I saw, I think Kasparas is a better on-ball defender than Trey Johnson. But I did
It's
think it
fair.
was interesting, if you notice here in the totals, Ethan, he actually had less blocks and steals, as much as it was only two less, or one less block and two less steals from Trey Johnson. So they're basically exactly the same. But he did have less of those. But still, I would say what I saw on ball was a little bit better. Now, maybe I'm just a little bit ignorant of all of his defense, but that's kind of my read on it. If you guys in the comments, if you guys saw some specific moments where Kasparas kind of got worked a little bit, pointed out to me. But as much as you can do that, I'm remembering a possession that I watched of Trey Johnson where he basically stood up Jeremiah Fears, who's one of the best scorers in this year's draft from Oklahoma. Again, that's not me saying that Trey Johnson is an elite defender, but it kind of goes back to the Rob Dillingham conversation last year about his defense. You can find little things here and there, but what is the overall, whole on
Mm.
average? And I would say I think Kasparas is just a little bit of a tick more than Trey on defense. But then again, there are some athleticism things as well. But I saw him kind of putting ball pressure on guys in a couple clips I watched.
Mm. I think that's more than fair.